Hello, everybody. Welcome into Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today is Friday, December 20th. We have a big show for you as always. Today, we take a look at, of course, the games from this weekend, NFL Week 16 game picks, and college football playoff predictions, as well as going over a couple of bowl games. Earlier on in the show, we'll discuss everything going on in the NFL, the multitude of quarterback changes, the Thursday night football game, and of course, we're going to get into our NFL power rankings that we did not get to go over on Tuesday. But before we get into any of that, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you are on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Friday, December 20th. But like I was saying, we're going to start off our show here today going over a little bit of the Thursday night football action from last night. We saw the Chargers get a massive W over the Denver Broncos. This was a game that was super important for not just the playoff implications of the two teams playing, but a couple teams that were in the hunt in the AFC, including the Cincinnati Bengals, the Miami Dolphins, and the Indianapolis Colts. Now, this result was the best result for those teams in the hunt. We saw a Broncos team that could have clinched with the win, and they're still one win away from clinching. But now it's a very similar situation for the Chargers. Both the Chargers and the Broncos are win and in. The difference between those two teams is their remaining schedule. When we've been going over these playoff scenarios the last couple of weeks, we've continued to say how it's going to be a very tough road for the Broncos. They were able to escape last week with a win that probably they didn't deserve against the Indianapolis Colts. They came out and they played really flat, especially in that first half. The Colts shot themselves in the foot enough times that the Broncos were able to come back and make it look like it wasn't a close game, but they went out there and they really destroyed them, honestly. The Colts should have won that game. Couple mistakes, Jonathan Taylor dropping the football, kind of inexplicable over there, but still. Broncos get away with the W, and now they are very close to the playoffs, but you look at their remaining schedule, right? The Broncos, after this game, have two really, really tough teams. They play the Bengals, who are desperate and trying to get into playoffs at any cost, and the Kansas City Chiefs have only lost one game all season long. Broncos almost beat them last time. A blocked field goal miraculously saved the Kansas City Chiefs' then undefeated season, but still, the Broncos have a little bit of fight in both of those games. The Chargers, on the other hand, most likely are in. They play two of the worst teams in all of football. They play the New England Patriots and then the Las Vegas Raiders. All they need to do is win one of those two games to move on. So this game was very huge for the Chargers, as they now basically are a lock. You look at the percentages, 98% chance to make the playoffs. And I was really impressed by Justin Herbert in this one. Justin Herbert is a guy that I think is pretty clearly a top 5 NFL quarterback. He's a guy that, sure, he's not going to be in conversation with Patrick Mahomes, with Josh Allen, with Lamar Jackson, these guys that are up there in the MVP rankings. But what he does for his team on a nightly basis is incredibly impressive. And I think he's a guy that maybe is one of the most underrated quarterbacks in all of the sport. Right? He goes out there, he doesn't make mistakes. Now, we saw a rare turnover for him in that first half of the game, a first half where the Denver Broncos absolutely dominated the entire game, right? The Broncos were up 21 to 10 heading into the second half or at zeros of the second half. That was a first half that was dominated by the Broncos. We saw Justin Herbert throw a rare interception. He only has 3 on the season. He had the streak of the longest consecutive game streak prior to 2 games ago, where he would not throw an interception. That's 2 straight games with an interception for Justin Herbert, but still, regardless, he's tied for the league lead in interceptions as far as qualified passers go. He is incredible at not turning the ball over. He also does a lot with his legs. We don't generally think of Justin Herbert as a guy that can scramble, but he picked up a lot of huge first downs, a lot of big yards with his legs when the passing game and the guys in the passing game just weren't able to get open against a pretty good Denver defense. But let's talk about the game itself. Getting into this one, like I said, the Broncos absolutely dominated that first half of play, but there were a couple plays in this game that kind of turned the momentum. First of all, the Broncos come out there and they just punch the ball down the Chargers' throat. This is a Chargers defense that was the number one scoring defense in the league as of last week. Now that has changed after they let a 40 bomb go on their heads by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That's not to say that this still isn't a good defense. The defense has absolutely fallen off. They're dealing with a couple of big injuries, and we saw Brashad Perriman, one of their starting linebackers, go down with injury early in this game. The Broncos then attacked the middle of the field. They attacked it with inside running plays, something that's kind of been a weakness of the Chargers all season long, right? But it's not just that, right? They ran up and down the field with their stable of 4 or 5 running backs. Mims got a couple of carries in there as well. I'm curious to see if he gets a couple more carries as the year continues. He's a guy that is incredibly explosive when he gets the ball in his hand. We saw Audric Estime get the first touchdown of the game. He gets in after a Javonte Williams had a couple big runs. Bo Nix ran for a couple of big chunks, and he had a couple big runs in there as well. But that entire first half was just run the ball down the Chargers' throat. Now, something was said at halftime. Something was said at halftime of that game, but before we get there were a couple of big plays, like I said, that kind of turned the momentum of this game. Obviously, we saw the Chargers take this win at the end of the day. So what changed from the first half to the second half? Well, I'm going to point to one key thing at the very end of the first half, 21-10. Zeros on the clock, basically. 5 seconds left. The Broncos punt the ball. Riley Dixon, one of the best punters in the league, goes out there, puts a lot of air under it so that the Chargers won't be able to get the ball back, run a Hail Mary play or anything like that. Fair catch interference is called against the Denver Broncos. Now we get the chance to see something rare, right? The free kick. The first time since 1976 that a free kick was successful. This is a very rare play because it has a very rare set of circumstances that allows you to do it, right? This is a free kick that you could only take, and it's like a kickoff. Kick it through the upright, it's a field goal, right? You go out and you run your kickoff play. But the only time you can do it is directly after a fair catch or a penalty regarding an official or a player that's not in the game currently. So if you got into a fight with someone on the bench, you could do that. But this is something that's very rare, right? A 57-yard field goal, he basically just gets a kickoff run up and gets to kick it. Goes in. That changes the momentum. It changes it from a 2-possession game heading into half to a 1-possession game. From there, the Chargers absolutely dominated. Not a single moment of that second half was really great for Bo Nix and the Broncos. And I want to talk about Bo Nix for a second here. But because for all the good that he does, it wasn't an incredibly impressive game. You look at the stat line, and it was fine. It was fine what he did, right? 29 for 44, 263 yards and 2 touchdowns, adding 25 more yards on the ground. Like I said, sprouted out a couple of big runs in that first half. 10 yards a pop, got 2 first downs, each of them. But what I want to point out with Bo Nix is again, something I've kind of pointed out all season long, but especially against this Chargers defense, one that was super susceptible to passes downfield earlier on this season, and really even just the last couple of weeks. They were not aggressive at all. It was 99% dump downs. There were a couple of throws over the middle in that medium range, that 10 to 19 yard range, but there were only 2 throws that were considered deep throws by PFF, by that analytics over there. 2 throws down the sideline on the right side, and neither of them were incomplete. That's the kind of thing that when I look at Bo Nix, I say this is why he isn't a guy that should have been in the Rookie of the Year conversation. This is a guy that did not deserve to get all the flowers that he's getting. I'm not saying he's a bad quarterback, right? He's doing what he needs to do, but the inability of this Broncos offense to push the ball vertically is something that really hurts them. They've had 2 plays of over 50 yards this season. One of them was that Mims touchdown, a beautiful deep post route against the Browns. That was a great one. The other one was also to Mims tonight. It was a screen pass. You take a look at the offense, his average depth of target, it's under 5 yards, right? It's a lot of screen pass. He threw 10 screen passes in this game. 10 out of his 44. That's almost 25% of his passes being behind the line of scrimmage. It's kind of ridiculous, right? This is a Broncos offense that, yes, it's working. So I'm not going to knock it too much, right? They're still able to put up 27 points against what is a good scoring defense. Now, I think that defense is more of a product of its schedule that it's played than it actually being an elite defense. But that's besides the point. They go out there and the Broncos just are unable to get it done. And I think one of the main reasons is I'm not going to blame Bo Nix. Play calling is a big part of it as well. They're just not pushing the ball vertically. And that's something that I'd really like to see, especially as we get into the playoffs, assuming the Broncos are going to get there. Although, like I said, it is a tough schedule to get in. But like I said, playoff implications here. Let's talk about it. Like I said, neither of them clinched. The Broncos could have clinched. They can still both get in this week. It's going to require a little bit of help from the outside. The Chargers get in with a loss by the Colts and the Dolphins this week. It's possible. They've got games that I think they both could lose. The Colts are always liable to lose a game, depending on what kind of Anthony Richardson they get. And the Dolphins are playing the 49ers. Again, depending on what kind of 49ers team you get, that's going to be a tough game. Same thing with the Broncos. They're in this week with a loss by the Colts, the Dolphins, and the Cincinnati Bengals. Not sure if all of that's going to happen, but a huge, huge Thursday night for playoff implications. It was a great game as well. Chargers get a massive victory. They're up to 9 wins on the season now. They're basically a lock for the playoffs. But let me know what you thought of the game. I'd love to hear your thoughts. We're going to take a quick break here. When we come back, we turn our attention to the NFL Power Rankings. 32-1 coming up on the other side here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient. Hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't need shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown. Get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the news it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today is Friday, December 20th. If you were just tuning in, we just finished going over the Thursday night football game that had massive playoff implications between the Chargers and the Broncos. That saw the Chargers win 34-27. In this segment, we get into our Week 16 NFL Power Rankings. I want to preface this with that it has not changed based on Thursday night's result. This is still from after last week's slate of games. But before we get into that, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you are on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Friday, December 20th. But like I was saying, we're going to get into the NFL power rankings for week 16 of the NFL season. It has been yet another crazy week. And as we reach the playoffs here, we're going to start to see a lot more changes in the rankings. But right here stays the same, right? At number 32, we have the New York Giants. This is just a case of my personal ideology. And I'm not saying that the Giants don't deserve to be the worst team in the NFL, because I'm pretty sure they are. But I've been saying it all season. I've been saying it for multiple seasons. If Tim Boyle comes into the game and plays meaningful snaps for your team, you are not playing real NFL football. He is a guy that should never see the field. I don't really care if he's a guy that's going to be a backup for your squad. That's fine. But if he sees meaningful playing time like he did for the Giants on Sunday, you are not a real NFL football team, and you automatically go to the bottom of the list. The Giants are at 32. At 31, we have the Las Vegas Raiders, another team with 2 wins fighting for that number 1 overall pick. This is a team led by Desmond Ridder, potentially Aiden O'Connell coming back later this week. We'll talk about all the quarterback changes in the next segment, but the Las Vegas Raiders, still a really bad team, right? We saw a couple of injuries go up against them, especially in that running back room. Sincere McCormick, a guy that was really starting to take off, not a guy that I think was really going to have a huge role, but a guy that was playing good football down the stretch for this team, goes down, is now out for this season. This is a Raiders team that just everything is going wrong right now. Maybe they can pull out a win against the Jaguars, although I'm not sure that's what they really want. At 30, we have the Tennessee Titans. The Titans, again, issues. Will Levis has officially been benched by this Titans team. They're not getting anything done offensively, at least as effectively as they want to. Lots of mistakes against a Bengals team that, honestly, if they played clean football against, probably could have won. They kept it close, especially with that bad Bengals defense. I think there's a chance that they could have won that game if they weren't turning the ball over too much. At 29, we have the Jacksonville Jaguars, right? We just mentioned them. They get a game against the Raiders this week. Mac Jones doesn't look awful, but that's been against some bad teams, right? And that's not a huge positive for this Jags team. They're just trying to get past this season. Really, most of these teams at the bottom are just trying to throw in the towel, be done with this NFL season, and move on and prepare for the next one. 28 is the Bears. This is a weird team to go over, right? They've now lost 8 straight games, but they've been competitive in most of them. And I know last week was not a great example of being competitive in a game, losing 30-12 on Monday Night Football. But this is a Chicago Bears team that I think if they just get the recipe to click, if they get a coach that can play to Caleb Williams' strengths, who, by the way, Caleb gets a lot of hate because he's not been playing to number 1 overall pick level, but he's been playing good football, right? He dances around too much in the pocket. He had a play where he had his back facing the field, did a little hurdle. Not what you want to do there, right? That's when you just take off, get a couple yards. But he's still learning. He's a rookie. He's kind of shell-shocked behind that offensive line. It's awful. Everything is going wrong for this Bears team, and they've now lost 8 straight. They're at number 28. At 27, we have the Falcons, another team that has made a quarterback switch. Kirk Cousins was just not doing it. They escape with a victory against the Las Vegas Raiders, a game where Desmond Ridder outplayed Kirk Cousins. Not a good look for the Falcons. They make that switch. They didn't really have another choice, but that's not where you want to be if you're a team that considers themselves in the playoffs right now. They are just outside of it. They're 1 game out. They need to win 1 more than the Bucs in these last 3 games of the season. I don't know if it's going to happen. I don't believe in this team, but they do have a pretty easy schedule. It's all going to come down to the Bucs. I like Michael Penix, though. I think that's a good move for them. At 26, we have the Patriots. Drake May, he's doing his thing. That defense is really bad. It is really bad. But this is a New England Patriots team that never really had much of a shot in this season. They weren't going out there to try and make the playoffs this year. I'd say overall, it was a successful season. They found out that they have a guy that they can build around in Drake May, and that's all they wanted to find out this season. Patriots at 26. At 25, we have the Colts. I want to like this Colts team. I really do. Anthony Richardson is a guy that I really do like as a quarterback. He needs to develop just a little bit more as far as his decision-making and timing, but a lot of unforced errors made by this Colts team, right? Jonathan Taylor dropping the ball at the 1-yard line, turning a touchdown into a touchback, a 14-point switch in that game, right? This is an Indianapolis Colts team that just keeps shooting themselves in the foot. They had that trick play that didn't work, ended up being a pick six, scored that one as a fumble, by the way, when Adonai Mitchell threw it backwards and Nick Bonito intercepted the lateral, took it back to the house. This is a Colts team that, again, they've got so much potential, and they're not out of the playoffs yet. They've got an easy schedule down the stretch here, but they're just not it. They're going to get destroyed in the playoffs if they do find a way in. They're at 25. At 24, we have the Panthers. Last game was not a great example of what Bryce Young has been able to do all season long, but still, this is the Panthers team that is much improved. They fall a couple spots this week from where they were last week. Bryce Young and the Panthers are improving, and I think he bought himself another year. I don't think it's going to be you're the franchise guy moving forward now kind of year, but it is going to be a year where we take a look and we say, hey, you've got a shot. Go and earn it. Carolina Panthers are doing just fine. They're not winning games, but they're keeping them close, which is all you can really ask for a team that was not expected to do much this season. At 23, we have the Dallas Cowboys, right? They go out and get a big win against those Carolina Panthers last time out. Micah Parsons has completely transformed this defense. That defense that was one of the worst units in all of football early on in the season is now starting to figure it out. That pass rush is getting home. Granted, against some of the worst offensive lines in all of football, the Giants and the Panthers recently. Still, though, this is a Cowboys offense I'm a little bit worried about. I'm not ready to put them into any kind of do they have a chance conversations, because they're just about eliminated from the playoffs at this point. Jets at 22. I've been really impressed by this Jets offense over the last couple of weeks. Aaron Rodgers seemingly has figured something out. Against the Dolphins, against the Jags, in their Miami little road trip down there, they went out and Aaron Rodgers played two really good games. Devontae Adams last week, almost 200 yards and 2 touchdowns. This was a huge game. This is what the Jets offense was supposed to look like all season long. I don't know what took them so long. I don't even know if it's sustainable. But 2 straight weeks of good Aaron Rodgers is something we haven't seen since he was with the Packers. So I'm starting to believe that this team can maybe turn it around down the stretch, keep Aaron Rodgers around next season. Maybe that's just a disaster in and of itself. Maybe it's better if they suck and Aaron Rodgers is gone. But this is where we are with the Jets. They've strung together a couple of good performances in a row. They're up to 22. 21, we have the Cleveland Browns. Jameis Winston is benched after 3 interceptions, 2 interceptions, 3 interceptions in his last 3 games, right? That is 8 interceptions over his last 3 games. Not a good look for the Browns. I don't like Dorian Thompson-Robinson. I don't think he's a great quarterback. We saw him come out and get absolutely destroyed in his spot starts last season against some good defenses, but still got absolutely destroyed. This is a Browns team that doesn't have that offensive upside without Jameis Winston, and I think they're about to fall in the next couple of weeks. At 20, we have the Saints. They get a big they have a big performance in the Superdome against a good Washington Commanders team. They're able to shut down the run. I know Tyler Bedaz wasn't there at center for the Washington Commanders, but still a great performance, a gutsy performance to nearly complete the huge comeback. I like going for 2 there. Obviously, it didn't work, so you're going to have some blowback. Some clock issues was the big thing there, but I was really impressed with this Saints team. They lose Alvin Kamara most likely for the season. Spencer Rattler's coming in to play quarterback. He led that comeback. I like it. This is a Saints team that still isn't very good, but they're kind of near that territory of best of the worst. At 19, we have the Dolphins. This is a team that just does not step up in the big moments. This is what we've been waiting on, right? Tua and the Dolphins. You can't blame the weather in this one. They were playing in a dome in Houston, right? And he puts a stinker out there on the field. 3 interceptions for a guy that generally doesn't turn the ball over. He couldn't get anything going. He had a stretch of 300 yards and 3 touchdowns in 3 straight weeks, right? And he goes into this game and he throws 3 interceptions, back-breaking interceptions. The Texans' offense didn't even play that good, right? You had CJ Stroud kind of struggling. The defense for the Dolphins was playing great, but Tua could not get anything going, and he has basically tanked this season for the Dolphins. The Dolphins still have a chance, an outside shot of making the playoffs, but they need a lot of help to get in at this point, and I think they're basically done. They got a tough game, a tough stretch coming up. They get the 49ers and then the Jets. One more team in there, but they need a win out, and I just don't see it happening. At number 18, we have the San Francisco 49ers. The 49ers, I really like this team, right? I do. They're incredibly talented. They were unable to get anything going in the rain on Thursday Night Football last week, but they just need to figure it out a little bit. Another running back goes down for them. Isaac Guerrero is out for the season. He suffered a continual injury on his ankle. He came in and played injured last week. Maybe that was part of it. Brock Purdy needs to figure it out. They've got the receivers. They've got the weapons. I'm not sure if he's earned a contract this year, but that's a conversation for the end of the season. At 17, we have the Cardinals. I can't figure this team out. I really can't. I like this Cardinals team a lot. They were ranked in my top 10 at one point. That defense has played really good. Kyler Murray and that offense has been very inefficient. I need them to turn it around, and I need them to turn it around quickly. If they're going to make any kind of noise in the playoffs, they're still in that division race, just a game back of the division leaders. It's going to be a tight race down the stretch, though. We'll see. Bengals at 16 here. This is just going to be if their offense can beat their defense every single week. It's going to be a shootout. It's going to be a fun game. They actually have the inside track to the playoffs if they're able to tie the record. They're playing with desperation. They've won a couple in a row now. Not really great teams, Cowboys and the Titans, but still. If they can win out, they're going to be a team that you do not want to see in the playoffs. The defense minimally is starting to play better. They're getting some more turnovers. They're still giving up a lot of yards, but they are getting turnovers, some big plays, and that's really helping this team not lose these shootout games anymore. At 15, we have the Seahawks. We saw the difference of this team with and without Geno Smith. Sam Howell is fine. He'll play better than he did on Sunday Night Football if you give him another chance. But not a good look for Sam Howell and the Seattle Seahawks. We saw Geno Smith start to figure something out against a good Packers defense, but just a little bit too little, too late. The Seahawks have a tough schedule down the stretch. I think they can figure it out, but it's not going to be easy. 14 is the Houston Texans. This team won on the strength of their defense, and that's something that I think is huge. That's something they haven't had in a while. CJ Stroud not playing his best football right now, but Nico Collins, 2 touchdowns last week. Joe Mixon, very good at football. This is a Texans team that is already in the playoffs. They've clinched their division. I want to see them string a couple of good performances together down the stretch here before they reach the playoffs, but they're in at the minimum, and that's all you can ask for. At 13, we have the Chargers. Obviously, we saw them on Thursday night. Again, this list was made before Thursday night. This was supposed to come out on Tuesday. Complications there. But the Chargers here at 13, again, they fall out of the top 10 on this one after a brutal loss to the Bucs. I think it's a great Bucs team, and I only dropped them a couple spots here because there were other teams that I think would beat them in a way that they played, the way that they played the Bucs just showed me. That defense, I think, is really susceptible, again, to those deep passes, something the Broncos did not take advantage of in this game. The Chargers and Justin Herbert, I think, will make the playoffs. I think they're going to be a dangerous team, but if you think they're going to be that team that relies on their defense, you're dead wrong. Rams at 12. I love this Rams team. Not only can they win a shootout, as we saw 2 weeks ago, but they can win a gut physical game, right? 12-6 against the San Francisco 49ers in the rain. They win that one right after they win the opposite of it, 44-42. Huge win, both of those. It shows that they can play with any team, match their play style, and gut it out and win those games. It's incredibly impressive, and that's what the Rams need to do, coming back from a 1-4 start and dealing with all those early injuries. At 11, we have the Commanders. I like this Commanders squad a lot. Jaden Daniels showed me a lot on Sunday. He took a lot of sacks. Not what you want to see. But This is a Commanders team that will make the playoffs if they win a couple more games. They're just barely out right now. They're the first team in the NFC that has not clinched a playoff spot. They're just outside the top 10. They should make the playoffs this year. Bucks at 17, a huge performance for them. They're getting better. Mike Evans is going to be very dangerous down the stretch. He's chasing his 1,000-yard mark. He's had a couple of huge games now, back to back. He probably will make it there. They're feeding him. That offense is clicking. This is a scary Buccaneers team right now. You don't want to face them, and arguably, they might be the second best team in the NFC, maybe third. I don't know, especially with how injured those Lions are. You can talk about a path for them into the NFC Championship game and potentially the Super Bowl. And 9 is the Broncos. We didn't see what we wanted out of the Broncos on Thursday Night Football, but again, that defense is very impressive, right? They've kind of let up a lot of points over the last couple weeks. Bo Nix isn't a guy that I want to rely on to come back in those situations, but this is a Broncos team that's winning games. You can't deny that. They're well coached. They're not making those mistakes where they're shooting themselves in the foot. But that's now back-to-back weeks, including this one, where we've seen them lose or probably should have lost a game. Still in the top 10, though. At 8, we have the Steelers. TJ Watt is going to be healthy, and that is huge for this team. If he is ready to go, if he is healthy and playing, this is a Steelers team that's going to wreak havoc on the Baltimore Ravens. That game is for the division. If they win it, they are the division champions of the AFC North, and who saw that coming? In a stacked division like that, the Steelers have a chance to clinch it on Sunday. At 7, we have the Green Bay Packers, right? Jordan Love has stopped turning the ball over. And it's amazing how good this team is when he doesn't turn it over, right? When he's not putting that defense on a short field, those quick change situations. When he's playing safe football, this is a team that compete with just about anybody in the league. And they're a team that could be sneaky Super Bowl pick in the NFC as well. At 6, we have the Ravens. They went out there and destroyed the Giants. And that's not much of an accomplishment, right? It's the New York Giants. But the Baltimore Ravens go out there. They drop 35 points, 5 touchdowns from Lamar Jackson. Rashad Bateman cooks them deep twice. If they can play like that against the Steelers, if they can play like that going forward against just about any team, they're going to destroy them. I'd like to see some more Derrick Henry down the stretch. I'd like to see him get going before the playoffs. He's a guy that I think is going to be key for playoff football. They need to feed him the rock, and they need to remember that when he touches the ball 20 plus times in a game, they are undefeated. That's what it comes down to. Ravens at 6. Entering into the top 5, though, we have the Kansas City Chiefs. They fall a spot. I'm a little worried about Patrick Mahomes. He's played through high ankle sprains before, right? And it looks like he's going to play this week on Saturday. But this is a Kansas City Chiefs squad that does not have that same kind of offensive firepower as it did when he played through it when they made the Super Bowl, right? This is a Patrick Mahomes that needs to do a little bit more supermaning, a little more escapability in the pocket, extend the plays than he was doing back then. He should be fine. I'm just a little bit worried about the Chiefs when he's hobbled. At 4, we have the Vikings, a huge win for them on Monday Night Football. They go out and they don't let a division opponent that was hungry for a win get to them. The defense plays great football. They get pressure on Caleb, and that offense with Sam Darnold continues to play good. I don't know how much I trust them down the stretch here, but still, this is a good, really good Minnesota Vikings team. The Lions at 3. Injuries are the key word for this team. They lose this game most likely because of injuries, right? David Montgomery goes down. 2 more key injuries on the defensive side of the ball. They're at 22 players on the IR now. That is a full starting roster, offense, defense. Now, most of that is on defense, which is bad. We see that defense start to get torched, and the offense, for its credit, can keep up. But when we're taking a look at the playoffs, you don't want to get into those shootout situations. It's not going to be easy for the Lions to control a lead, and it's going to be tough on that offense and the running game especially. At 2, we have the Bills. They get a big win against the Lions last week. Josh Allen, yet again, MVP-like performance. They've dropped 40 plus in 2 straight games. They're 1-1 in those games, but they've also given up 40 plus in each of those 2 games. That's scary. I want that defense to play better. That defense needs to play better because as good as Josh Allen is, you can't count on him going Superman in every single game. There's going to be a game where a defense slows his scrambling down a little bit, contains him, and then he's not going to be able to do what he does in these last 2 weeks. We will see, though. I'm a little concerned about the Bills' defense. That's why they're not one. But at number one, it's the Eagles, right? Jalen Hurts figured out how to pass the ball. That's huge. The defense is the best in all of football. When they are clicking like this, Saquon, obviously at the running back position, he's one of the best in all of football. You have one of the best receiving duos in all of football, and Jalen Hurts is a top 10 quarterback, right? This is a very scary team. They're my Super Bowl favorites out of the NFC just because of how good that defense is right now. And if that offense can play like they did last week, every week, they're basically unstoppable. But let me know what you think. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we turn our attention to game picks in the NFL. We have a full slate of games to go over. We'll talk about that and much more coming up next here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube. Absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today is Friday, December 20th. If you were just tuning in, we just went over the NFL Power Rankings for Week 16. In this segment, we go over our game picks for this weekend, NFL, and then college football in the next segment. We're going to start off in the NFL, like I said, but before we get into that, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you are on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Friday, December 20th. But like I was saying, we're going to get into our NFL game picks here. We have a full slate of games this week, no bye weeks as we get down the stretch in the NFL. We obviously just saw a game between the Chargers and the Broncos. Was a really good one, honestly, on Thursday Night Football. But we have 2 Saturday games this week, and that's where we're going to start. The Houston Texans travel to Kansas City to take on Patrick Mahomes, hobbled Patrick Mahomes, and the Kansas City Chiefs, right? Houston is 3.5-point underdogs in this one, and we just saw a Houston defense play really good football against Tua and a Dolphins offense that is super explosive, especially in controlled weather conditions, right? This is a Houston team that is starting to really click defensively if you give them time. That pass rushing duo is going to get home. Danielle Hunter and Danielle Hunter is playing really, really good off the edge this season. You obviously have the defending defensive rookie of the year on the other side, right? This is going to be a tough game for the Chiefs. Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs like to play ball control style football, right? They're going to try and run the ball. It's something that the Texans are actually pretty good against. The run, if they can bottle that up and force Patrick Mahomes to pass, especially with him being hobbled on that high ankle sprain, I think they might be able to get home, get a lot of pressure, and it's not going to be an easy game for the Chiefs. That's a lot of ifs. that is the game plan for the Houston Texans if they can get it done. I think the Chiefs are going to be able to supplement it with some screen pass game, get extension of the run game, quick pass, and really take advantage of a guy like Xavier Worthy in this one and his speed. I'm taking the Chiefs to win a close one, 23-20. The other Saturday game, this one is for the division. If the Pittsburgh Steelers win, they win the AFC North. Pittsburgh, they travel to Baltimore. Baltimore 6.5-point favorites in this one. That is way too many points for a big divisional matchup. This is a Pittsburgh Steelers team that, especially with TJ Watt, that defense is playing incredible. The Baltimore Ravens, coming off of a huge game against the New York Giants and a bye week, they're going to be pretty rested up. I think they take this one at home. It's not going to be an easy one. It's going to be close. I think they win 31-27. Getting into Sunday's action, we have a rookie quarterback in Michael Penix Jr. making his first career start against the New York Giants. An easy game for him to start. A battered secondary, a battered front line. This is going to be a game where I think him and the Atlanta offense really go off. Bijan could have a huge game. Really, everyone on the Atlanta offense, I think, is going to have a big game. He's going to look for Drake London down the sidelines, that deep threat offense. I think it's finally going to start to click, and I think the Atlanta Falcons, who are favored by 9, cover that pretty easily. They win 30-17. The Los Angeles Rams favored by 3 as they travel cross country to face the New York Jets in MetLife Stadium in the Meadowlands, right? The Jets, like I said in the power ranking segment, have started to figure something out on offense. And we saw that this is a Rams team that is susceptible to a running quarterback. And that's not Aaron Rodgers. But what I've seen out of Aaron Rodgers in the last couple games, with his movement especially, has been actually really impressive to me. That's one of those things that I've been looking at and seeing. Is he back? Is he healthy? Obviously, coming off that Achilles injury, he wasn't doing it at the beginning of the season. But his ability to move around in the pocket, scramble, extend the play, we've seen it over the last couple weeks really pay dividends, do wonders for that offense. He's had a couple good games in a row. The Jets have had a couple good games in a row. I think it's going to be close. But I think at the end of the day, that Rams offense is just a little bit too high-powered, and I think they take this win 34-20. The Philadelphia Eagles, favored by 3.5, travel to Washington to take on the Commanders. This is also one of those games where if the Philadelphia Eagles win, they can clinch their division. They come in at 12-2, tied with the Vikings and the Lions for the best record in the NFC. The Philadelphia Eagles are just flat out a better team than the Commanders. I think the Commanders are going to keep it close, keep it interesting, but that defense of the Philadelphia Eagles, I think, is going to be just a little bit too much for Jaden Daniels to deal with. We saw that last time they played, and I think a couple bad decisions are going to lead to a Philadelphia win, 27-17. The Arizona Cardinals travel to Carolina. They take on Bryce Young and the Panthers. Arizona favored by 5 as of recording. This is an Arizona Cardinals team that will have all of its guys healthy. James Conner should have a huge day on the ground. That is a defense that I just do not trust in the Carolina Panthers. And I think because of that, the Arizona Cardinals win this game with a heavy diet of James Conner and a little bit of Kyler Murray sprinkled in there just for a little bit of flavor. The Cardinals win 28-15. Cleveland travels to Cincinnati. The Cincinnati Bengals, a desperate team, favored by 9 as Dorian Thompson-Robinson gets his first start of the season in his second season. Obviously, we've seen him go out there, play a couple of games last year. It did not go well, to say the least. That is not a guy that I'm really tuning into and really believing to turn this Browns season around. As much as Jameis Winston was playing bad football, this is not the right move to win the game, right? Sure, Jameis is going to do his thing where he throws 3 interceptions in a game. But he's also doing his thing where he keeps pace in touchdowns, right? 13 touchdowns to 12 interceptions on the season for him, and that's what you expected of Jameis. I don't know what the Browns were expecting when they turned to him to be their full-time starter, but if it wasn't that, I don't know what it was. They moved on. Dorian Thompson-Robinson is just a worse quarterback. It's not going to work out. The Browns are going to get absolutely destroyed in this one. Cincinnati keeps their playoff hopes alive. They win 38-17. The Tennessee Titans travel to Indianapolis to take on a division rival in Anthony Richardson and the Colts. Colts favored by 3.5 in this game. Anthony Richardson is going to be Anthony Richardson, right? He's going to run. I think he's going to destroy them on the ground, actually, with his physicality. This is going to be a game that I think is going to be a little bit too close for comfort for the Colts. I don't know. I don't know how confident they are in this game, but I think Mason Rudolph, with his lack of mistakes and the defense for the Colts that is very turnover dependent, right? They're going to play fine defense. If they can turn you over, they're going to play good defense. If not, it's just going to be okay. And I think because of that, this game is going to be not as big of a win as the Colts think. I think they still escape with a victory, but it's a 1-point kind of walk-off victory for them, 21-20. The Detroit Lions, on the final 1 o'clock game of this slate, travel to the Chicago Bears to travel to Chicago to take on the Bears. Caleb Williams looked absolutely distraught after that last game. He looked injured, he looked done, and this is a Bears defense that has gotten worse and worse. Now, this is a Lions defense that is completely injured. They're probably on second and third units at this point from where they expected to be at the beginning of the season. They lose David Montgomery. I think that's not going to be a big deal because you have Jahmyr Gibbs. And I think Jahmyr Gibbs might take the reins and never give them back. When David Montgomery, who signed an extension earlier this season, gets healthy, I think we're looking at less of a 50-50 and more of a 75-25 kind of workload for those running backs heading into next season. Jahmyr Gibbs is awesome. Whenever he touches the ball, he's explosive, and I think he's going to be enough. Detroit wins 30-21. Getting into the 4 o'clock slate on Sunday, the Minnesota Vikings travel to Seattle. They take on the Seahawks. Geno Smith should be good to go. He practiced in full. Obviously, this is a much different game if we see Sam Howell back there. I think this is where Minnesota is prone to an upset. They just clinched the playoffs last week. They're excited. They celebrated. I think Kevin O'Connell is a good coach, a really good coach, my favorite for coach of the year right now if we had to do voting. But I think this is where Seattle says, hey, we're a desperate team. Backs against the wall. We have home field advantage. And I think they shock the world, shock the Vikings, win 33-24. The Buffalo Bills are favored by 14 points, taking on the New England Patriots. I don't think this is going to be a pretty game for either of them, especially for the New England Patriots. Josh Allen, I don't think can keep it up. I think he's going to do his thing for the first half, and then they're going to kind of rest and go into garbage time. I think it's going to be a game that's a little bit closer on paper than it was in real life, and I think the Bills just dominate, right? I can't see this game really going many other ways. Maybe Drake May has some magic under his sleeve, but I just don't really see it. The Bills win 30-17. In really what is a toilet bowl of a game this week, Jacksonville travels to Las Vegas. Vegas is favored in a game for the first time in a very long time. They have 2 wins. They probably don't want to win this game. I don't know if Aiden O'Connell is going to be healthy. He practiced in full, which is pretty impressive after being put in an air cast less than 2 weeks ago. He's going to go out there most likely, and I think because of that, the Las Vegas Raiders are going to win this game. Brock Bowers should have a big one against a bad Jacksonville team, and I think Las Vegas wins 21-13. And the best game of the 4 o'clock slate. The San Francisco 49ers travel to Miami. They take on the Miami Dolphins, a Dolphins team that is in desperation mode. Both of these teams in desperation mode. They need to win out, and they need some help to get into the playoffs. At this point, San Francisco, I think, coming to play in Miami, I think it's going to be a nice change of pace. We've seen them when they play in good weather. When they played the Bears, they absolutely dominated them, and I think we're going to get a similar offensive showing for them this week. Obviously, running back situation is up in the air, and that's not a great thing for a Kyle Shanahan team, but I think it's going to be a close one rather than a blowout like it was against the Bears. They win 26-24. The Sunday night game this week is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers taking on the Dallas Cowboys in Jerry World. The Bucs, I think, are a wagon right now. They are a team that just has all of the momentum. They are not going to lose a game to the Dallas Cowboys. I think they win 30-23. That is a better Dallas Cowboys defense, though. And then the Monday night game. New Orleans travels to Green Bay. This game's not going to be very close. New Orleans, as much as I like Spencer Rattler more than Jake Haener, he's not going to be the answer against a Green Bay defense that just absolutely shut down a guy like Sam Howell, who I think is even a little bit better than Spencer Rattler at this point. Green Bay's going to win pretty easily as long as Jordan Love doesn't get too turnover happy. They win 20-38. We're going to take a quick break here. When we come back, we go over college football playoffs and bowl games. Predictions on the other side here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today is Friday, December 20th. If you were just tuning in, we just finished going over the NFL game picks for this weekend, Week 16. In this segment, we turn our attention to college football. The playoffs begin tonight. We're going to talk about them and a couple of big bowl games that are happening this weekend and today. But before we get into that, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you are on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Friday, December 20th. But like I was saying, we're going to finish off our show here today going over a little bit of the college football playoffs and bowl game predictions. A couple of games to get out of the way from earlier on this week. We saw James Madison University get their first ever bowl win in the history of their school. In their first real year of eligibility, they finished the transitions last season, got their first bowl appearance on technicality, as not enough teams reached that 6-6 threshold. They ended up losing that one. They get their first ever win in a bowl game with their third and fourth string quarterbacks, a gutsy game led by their defense, who only allowed 16 yards on the ground. A huge win for the Dukes. They win 27-17 in the Boca Raton Bowl. A fake punt and some miscues by Cal led UNLV to cap off a really good season for them. Obviously, we saw their coach leave. It's a tough break for them. They made a good hire though. That's a good look for that program. That's only going to get better. They finished the season at 11-3 overall. Good spot to be if you're Boise State. If you're UNLV, they win 24-13. Memphis caps off a good season for themselves, another group of 5 team with a big victory, winning 42-37 over West Virginia. This was a game that they had to gut out. It looks a lot closer on paper than it was. Memphis was up 18 in the third quarter at one point. They had to stave off a valid comeback attempt by the Mountaineers. They almost come all the way back. The Memphis Tigers are able to hold them off. They get a big bowl win and finish the season ranked at number 25. In the last game that took place last night, Sam Houston won their second straight bowl game in their first real year of eligibility, right? They go out there, they get a big win against a group of 5 program that beat Vandy earlier on this season in Georgia Southern. That's not an easy matchup for them. Sam Houston has played really good ball as of late, and they're the first CUSA team to win after a couple of them had dropped to Sunbelt opponents earlier on in the week. But now let's get into some games that are yet to occur. By the time this comes out, a couple of these games will be over or underway, but we are recording this at 10 a.m. on Friday. So predictions for these games. The Gasparilla Bowl is the big non-playoff game this weekend between Tulane and Florida. This is going to be a really good game. Obviously, it would be better if Tulane still had Darian Mensah. As it stands right now, the Florida Gators, who look like they're going to have just about everybody playing in this bowl game, it's in Tampa. It's going to be basically a home game for the Florida Gators, although New Orleans not too far away from Tampa, so it's going to be a packed house at Raymond James tonight. This is going to be a fun game, right? Tulane and Florida both have high-powered offenses. This is going to be basically a battle of whoever wins the turnover battle, right? Whoever can control the ball, whoever can not make mistakes is going to win this game. I'm leaning towards Florida, although Tulane, outside of Darian Mensah, does have a 5-star that they were able to recruit. Lost his job at camp. He is still there. John Summerall might have his guys ready. I know they've kind of slipped over the last couple of weeks. I think Tulane keeps it close. Spread's pretty big right now. It's at 10 points. It was at 14. It's coming down. I think Florida still finds a way to win, but it is close, 24-32. But now we get into the playoffs here, right? 4 games this weekend, starting off tonight with Indiana at Notre Dame. The battle for the state of Indiana. First time they're playing in almost 33 years since these two teams met on the football field. Notre Dame obviously has absolutely dominated that matchup. It's been 50 years since the Indiana Hoosiers last won a football game against Notre Dame. This is going to be a snow game, most likely. This is a game of strength on strength. You get the best run defense in the game versus one of the best running offenses in the game. The snow, I think, is going to hurt Notre Dame more than it's going to hurt Indiana. Both of these teams have strong run games, but the run defense, I think, gets better than the run offense in the snow, and because of that, I think Indiana escapes with a low-scoring victory, 17-15. SMU at Penn State on Saturday. This game's going to be really interesting. I think this is going to be the highest scoring game of the college football playoffs. Both of these teams can absolutely score. We saw Drew Aller light it up against a really good Oregon defense in the Big Ten championship game. SMU, we saw them turn it on at the end in that ACC championship game, but the physicality held them down in the beginning. I think this is a team with Kevin Jennings that could give Penn State some trouble. Obviously, Penn State has athletic defensive ends that can keep contain on him, and I think that's going to be the big thing. But I think this game is going to be a bit of a shootout down the stretch here. I think SMU doesn't quite have the juice to get it done, and Penn State wins 38-27. Clemson taking on Texas. Texas favored by 12 in this one. That's crazy to me. Texas and Clemson, to me, have very, very comparable teams and very, very comparable schedules. They're both very, very tough, very physical football teams. The quarterback play for both of these teams is a little bit questionable. They rely on some big plays a little bit too much, and I think whoever hits the first big play in this game is going to be the one to crack it wide open. I don't think Texas is going to lose this one, but I do think it's going to be a lot closer than people think. I think Texas wins 31-25. And then the game of the week, the game of the night, potentially the best matchup that we're going to get in the entire college football playoff. Tennessee travels to Ohio State. Ohio State favored by 7.5 right now. I think that's crazy. They're coming off of that loss to Michigan. It's not going to be like that. I think Michigan just puts a spell on them or something. They're going to be better than they were in that Michigan game. Tennessee is going to put up a fight. Both of these, especially that Tennessee defense, is incredible. Both of these defenses at the top of the country. It's going to be a game of whichever quarterback I think has the best. Both Nico and Will Howard are kind of game managers in these systems. They rely more on the running backs. They rely more on the defense to win them games. But Nico's come out and played really good football as of late. We've seen Will Howard be able to play good football in recent games. Obviously not against Michigan. Whoever doesn't make mistakes, whoever keeps their team in the game is going to be the one that I go with. And I think Ohio State, with that home field advantage, is going to do just enough to pull it out. I think they win 27-23. But let me know what you think. I'd love to hear your thoughts on anything we talked about in this show. We'll be back on Monday talking everything, the college football playoff results, the NFL games, power rankings on Monday as well. Hope you have a great weekend. We'll be back then. You'll have a good one. Bye-bye.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn, ain't that great.